everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WC Reader, and welcome back to my channel. So we have a lot to talk about today, so I'm not going to get for too long, but June was a busy month. I started it off in Jamaica, living my best life. Then I came home to like this big heat wave that just made me not want to do anything but lay on the couch. So I didn't get a lot of reading done in time to do a mid-month wrap-up like I normally do. So that's why I have so many books in this video, which I usually don't try to do a long one, but this is going to be a little bit lengthy. To break it up and make it easier, I'm splitting it up by age category just because it's going to ensure that I don't forget books, as I really do have a lot to talk about. And I do want to thank all the new subscribers because some of you started following me from a very good Twitter discussion. I hope you like it here. Y'all really ran up the numbers of one of my past videos, and we've been having great conversations, and I hope you continue to have great conversations with me and enjoy the books that I'm about to talk about next. I'm going to kick it off with a Cowboy Kind of Thing by Reese Ryan. I believe this was the last adult book that I read during the month. I mean, I did start Masquerade and I did start Let Me Liberate You, but I did not finish those, so I decided to carry those over. Just if you recall, they were on my TBR for the month of June. But A Cowboy Kind of Thing is a cute romance. So we're following Deanna and Tripp. Deanna is a casting director who lives in Los Angeles, and Tripp is a rancher living in Texas. They have best friends who are getting married, and Deanna's upset because her best friend decided at the last minute to move the wedding to Texas. She's like, all her people are out in LA. Why are we moving the wedding to Texas? So she's kind of scoping everything out for her, making sure the wedding is good. And it's Tripp's job to show her around to the different venues and help her put this last minute affair together. And along the way, like, she starts to appreciate what his town has to offer. They fall in love. There's a lot of talk about careers, and she is in love with her career as a casting director. He likes the legacy of his ranch, but he's not in love with the idea of being a rancher, so that was an interesting discussion to have. And we see how they kind of work to fit in to each other's lives. This was a cute story, quick read, and I, as always, love a good read Ryan romance. I read A Little Bit of Love by Cynthia Williams. I love Cynthia Williams. She's one of my favorite Black romance authors, and I love how like quick and digestible her books are. I especially love that she writes grown-ass people, because she doesn't do a lot of third act breakups, which I really appreciate. And I find that she does a great job making the drama come from outside sources. So in A Little Bit of Love, we are following Sherry. If you read the Heart and Soul series and you read Counterfeit Courtship, you will recognize her as Tyrone's ex who vandalized his car and created that website talking about how much of a dog and a player he is. So you don't have to read that book to read this one, but I think you should go read that series anyway, just because it's so damn good. It's been a couple of years since that incident, but people are still holding it against her. She is a business owner who has her own little cafe on the south side of town. There's been a lot of issues with rowdy teenagers in the area recently, so there is a concerted community effort to put an end to that. She gets paired up with Andre, who is a cop who is new to town. Now, he is a cop. They don't shy away from actually having a discussion with about what that means, because we all know Black people don't trust the cops, and for good reason. So we don't skirt around that like some people probably would to make the romance work. Like, we do address that, and her family is apprehensive about her getting into a relationship with a cop, which I appreciated seeing that on page. And I'm glad we didn't just romanticize that. Also, DeAndre comes with like some baggage of his own, in that he has a teenage son from his marriage. So he is a widower. He has moved to this town because his wife used to live in the town, and he wanted his son to grow up with his grandparents. Now his son DJ is getting into some trouble. Like, he's running with a different crowd. He quit the wrestling team. He's acting funny. He's trying to break him and Sherry apart as they're trying to get closer together. And I like that type of drama as well, because normally when we read these books, you know, even some of the ones that I've read in the past from Cynthia Williams, you have like the teenage daughter usually that's like rooting for like them to be together, and that wasn't the case here. Like we had a son who was actively like, yeah, no, I'm not feeling that, and DeAndre has to navigate that, like, well, why don't you like her, and just addressing those issues and concerns and making sure his son is a priority. Because when you're in a relationship with somebody and they have a child, like your relationship with their children is also super important. That's why I don't like to date people with kids, because like I'm not ready to be a mom right now, and I would have to step into that role if I were to date somebody with kids. So I like that we did not skirt around that. We addressed that. The romance is just super cute here. There's a lot of drama with Sherry's cousin as well, like, who does not want to see her happy, and she's kind of a hater, and she's kind of annoying actually. Like, she was running my last nerve at some point. But overall, like, it does address some other things really well. Like, there is some talk of gang activity and teens, and there was like an explosive ending, and I really liked how that was done. This is also available as an audiobook if that's your thing, so check it out. We have Until I Met You, and this one is by Amber Rosegill. And I started this one when I was on vacation. Like, I think I read like the first chapter, and I kind of put it down and did not pick it back up again. So when I came home, I picked it up, and it definitely had me yearning to go back to Tobago, because it's been like 6 years now at this point since I've been. And I would say the stuff here is spot on. It's very much a vacation type of place, including for Trinidadians. So they do a lot of touristy activities, but I haven't really seen like a book where that took place in Tobago, like from the tourist like viewpoint. So that was pretty cool to see. Amber Rosegill does have roots in Tobago, in that her father is from there. So it was cool to see like the nylon pool and stuff like that. I liked the whole destination wedding aspect as well. So we're following Samantha. Her best friend is getting married, so she travels from the UK to Tobago to her best friend, and she's starting to realize like their friend group doesn't really talk that much. They don't have as much in common anymore as they thought, and they keep everything in, so they don't know each other as well, and things start to come out during the time there. She is the only single one along with Roman, so they just kind of naturally gravitate to each other after like a rocky meeting. And she is just getting out of like a bad breakup, so she's starting to feel very close with him, but he does not want to tell her anything about his life, which got annoying after a couple of times. I'm like, damn it, give her something, anything. Like, we literally know nothing about you, man. But their like summer romance aspect of it was very cute. The whole vacation vibe thing, that was nice. But I feel like around like the 60% mark, like it felt like, okay, the story should be over soon, and that's when the drama was really amping up. I feel like it could have been done a lot better, where we got the wedding related drama like dispersed throughout, so that it didn't feel like it was just like chapter after chapter of drama towards the end. And just like there was a lot of self-discovery going on with Samantha. Like, she didn't know where she wanted to be career-wise. She didn't know what she wanted in life. She's writing this blog that's supposed to be a travel blog, but it really starts to become like a personal blog about her and her friends and the different situations they are going through. So overall, this was cute. The drama did keep me reading, but I wish it was like started earlier and just woven through the story better. I have Summer on Sag Harbor. This one is by Sunny Huston. So in Summer on Sag Harbor, it is following the events of Summer on the Vineyard. So if you haven't read the first book in the series, you need to go ahead and pick it up. We are following Olivia. She's moving into her new house in Sag Harbor. It is summer of 2021, so it's a different environment. Like, COVID restrictions are starting to lift a little bit, so if you don't like COVID talk, not the book for you. But she is dealing with her fiance now. They're like out of their pandemic bubble and getting out into the world again, and realizing there's a lot of differences between them, like, because it really addresses like what it means to be in an interracial relationship, like realistically, and like the hardships you will have to deal with and the tough conversations you will have to have that we don't actually see as much in books, because a lot of times we're like reading romance where it's just kind of like glossed over and race doesn't matter. Which I know a lot of people don't want to hear about that in their romance, but it can be done well, I feel like, just so we're not getting like a completely romanticized version. And she definitely had a more romanticized look at their relationship in the previous book compared to now, where her fiance is not feeling at place in this new community, but she is like thriving in this new community because she's meeting all these different people, and she's trying to find out more information about her father, who passed away when she was a child, so she never got to know him and his family, and her mom has been keeping like any information about them like under lock and key. This also talks heavily about gentrification, but it does something different than I find a lot of books that talk about gentrification do. So I find a lot of books give you the facts about gentrification, but they don't give you the community aspect. You don't see the main characters bonding with the community like you do here, so there's not a vested interest, which is usually where they fall flat for me. Also, like a lot of those books, like they be falling for the gentrifier, and I'm like, make it make sense. This one does not do that. Olivia starts to fall for her neighbor, who is very sexy, and she does a little bit of cheating, and she has to kind of deal with that in therapy. But she has this drive to really help this community, because we're seeing like these companies come in and infiltrate it and break apart all the history there. So this will, even though it touched on different topics that can be a little bit heavier, it does it very well, and I had a good time. It's still made for a pretty light beachy read. Now onto the YA portion of this video. So I'm going to start with It Waits in the Forest by Sarah Das. So I started reading this one, but I started reading this one in early May, but like I was just struggling a little bit to get into it at first, so it took me a while longer. So I ended up reading it when I got back home from vacation, and I was like in the mood for a different kind of read. So this one was like marketed, I feel, very like horror thriller-esque, but Sarah Das's background is really in romance, and I think really the second chance romance part of this shines. As well as like she does a great job creating the atmosphere of the island, but I don't feel like she fully goes there as far as like all the paranormal aspects like she could have. It's a lot vague. Like we're hearing this mythology, which is really cool. Like I said, you have the great build up. There's a good mystery aspect to it, but she doesn't like dive all the way in. So I can't like call this like a horror thriller type of stuff. It's just more like a cool mystery with like some slight paranormal, maybe possibly elements. You're left guessing. And a heavy second chance romance, which I thought was pretty cute. So we're following Selena. She is like a fake psychic on her small island. She tricks tourists by using the information she learned from her mother about herbs and medicinal healing, and then makes some other stuff up and uses some fake props like to give them like that kind of voodoo experience that they're expecting. And then like she tries to like use like things like from their wallet and phones and stuff to kind of get more information about them, which I thought was really fun. Now this one tourist comes in who is clearly tormented, and she doesn't know how to help him, like save him from this darkness that he's talking about. And next thing, like murders are happening on the island, which ties back into like murders that were happening previously on the island, on which resulted in the death of her father and putting her mom in a coma. So it's like a race with her and her ex-boyfriend, who recently moved back to the island, to solve this mystery. Like overall, it was very atmospheric. It was like a nice read, but it just didn't have that like horror aspect. So if you're looking for that part, I wouldn't say pick it up. But if you're looking for like an interesting read that kind of blends mythology, and you like a good second chance romance with a hint of mystery, pick this one up. Now if you are looking for that horror and you want another Caribbean story and you want it to be queer as well, Malicia is the way to go. This one is by Stephen Dos Santos, and I had a good time with it. Like, the atmosphere, of course, was everything. We are on an island off the coast of the Dominican Republic at a haunted amusement park. So 13 years prior, there was a mass murder that took place there. Each of the teens going there has their reason for being on the island. Like, Isabella is an aspiring filmmaker. She believes that she makes this documentary, it's going to put her career on the map and get her into any school she wants to go to. Raymundo's mother and brother were killed there, so that's his tie to Malicia, and he's trying to get some answers. And Sophia's just along for the ride with her friends and wants to have one last great romp with them. While Akeem, he is a part of a coven, and he is trying to sacrifice Raymundo before he has to sacrifice himself. So it's fast-paced, short chapters, alternating POVs, which really worked for this type of story, and plenty of spookiness, some Dominican mythology mixed in, and just a fun type of read. I read Twelfth Knight. This one is by Alexine Farrell-Falmouth. She's also the author of the Atlas 6, but this one is contemporary romance. It is a Twelfth Knight retelling, and I do have a video coming out about this, so I don't want to speak too much on it, but I do have to address, like, the romance part was pretty cute. Like, it's kind of like opposites attract. She's very, very prickly to the point where she could actually be annoying at times because she's so prickly, whereas he's just an overall nice guy, and for a jock, not what you would expect, like, based off of, like, the stereotype of a jock. We are following the world of those player online role-playing games, which is not something I'm familiar with, but we dive a lot into here, and like the different backstories they create, and this one is an Arthurian legend inspired world. Now, there was a lot of talk about being a nerd and sexism, and I feel like the stuff about being a nerd was so dated. I feel like it was approaching it from like a 10 years ago point of view versus a today point of view. Like, they kept talking about how it was so nerdy to watch this, like, basically in-universe Game of Thrones, and I feel like that's not nerdy in today's environment. Like, there are a lot of baddies who are watching Game of Thrones. Like, it's not something people would look down on you on. And yes, we know the sci-fi community is filled with dude bros who try to mansplain, but there's also men who are willing to listen. I feel like the sexism and misogyny was just laid on heavily here, and like the version of feminist that we were approaching, he was very much white feminist, not enough feminists come from the point of view of being a Filipino woman, which Viola is, and not enough talk about racism in the spaces. Like, we're following Viola, who is Filipino, and Duke is black and white, so I would have liked to see the racism aspect touch on like their specific individual experiences a little more in those communities. Overall, it was a very cute read, although it did get wordy in the middle, where if I had not been listening to the audiobook, I probably would have fallen off. It is a Reese's book club pick. I don't get the hype around it, like, because the book club my book club went away for like a year, and like it got revived back for this book, and I'm just like, this was okay. I mean, I could see it kind of being a cute movie, but at the same time, we already had She's the Man, who was also a 12th Night retelling. So if you like 12th Night, though, pick it up. So I read a lot of children's books this month, so I want to go over them with you. I'm going to start with the chapter book that I read. This one is Rica Baptista, A Week of Shenanigans. This is a cute story about a girl named Rica, and she is Cape Verdean, and her grandfather, every summer, he comes and stays with them for a week, and they just have a week of adventures with her, and he even includes her best friend in the adventures. This year's a little bit different because he shows up with an injury, so he can't like walk around and do all the stuff that they would normally do. So they have to come up with creative ways to still have a fun week, and every day is a different adventure for them. I just thought it was great to see like a book where you're seeing the bonding of a grandparent and a child. That is something super important, especially seeing Black grandparents with their grandchildren. And at the same time, like, there was a lot of wacky fun to be had in this that'll make it a good read for those young independent readers who want something fast-paced. I read so many picture books. So I read Faruq and the Wiri. which is like set in Guyana, and it's about this little boy who is learning from his neighbor how to cook because his grandmother is telling him no, like focus on school, blah 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 blah, but he really has a passion for food, and so he starts learning from his neighbor woman how to cook these different traditional dishes, and like she even teaches him some of like her family's recipes, and he's able to share that with his grandmother. So again, that great grandparent bonding as well as some culture. And I don't see a lot of children's books like around Guyanese culture, so that was pretty cool to see, especially since I was reading it during Read Caribbean Month. Jayylen's Juneteenth surprise I ended up gifting to my cousin's son just because he has African American heritage on both sides, so I wanted to give him this book with a little boy who not only looks like him, but is talking about a very significant holiday for his people. And so in this one, Jayylen is getting an introduction to Juneteenth, but he's also getting an introduction to Zydeco music, which I thought was really cool and a great tie-in because June not only has Juneteenth, but also it is Black Music Month. So it is our time to pay tribute to the many different types of Black music, and Zydeco is not something I had ever heard of before, so this was a learning experience for me as well. And it's going to be a learning experience for him when he picks it up and reads it. But Jayylen learns to love and appreciate this form of music, and he even gets to surprise his grandfather by introducing him to one of his favorite musicians. Lupita's Hurricane Palomitas, and it's interesting. I read this, and we're in hurricane season now, and a lot of islands are facing like a category 4 hurricane right now, and it is very scary. Like, I haven't experienced it, but I know so many people who have, and this is a great book that talks about the anxiety around that when you're living in those areas where you can't just up and leave and you have no idea what's going to happen. So Lupita finds these little birds, and she's able to focus her attention on that while they wait for their mother to return, and she takes care of them. It's based off a real life experience the author had, which I thought was pretty cool as well. I have this pile right here. So we have Abuela's Library, which is about a grandmother. She is a former librarian, and she takes her grandson to the library, and then they like to sit under the big oak tree where they'll read the books. Now the oak tree gets so old that they have to cut it down, and they get together as a community and turn it into a little free library, which I thought was super sweet. Also, something else I appreciate about this is that they are a Dominican family, but it's not focused on like them being Dominican as a story. Instead, we're just focusing on this great story about community, but you see like the little touches and the illustrations that show that they are Dominican, which was pretty cool. I've said it before and I will say it again, that as great as it is to have stories where culture is at the forefront and where being Black is at the forefront, it's also good to just have stories where Black children are just being in everyday types of situation. Back home with story time with my father. So this one was great because we are following a father who tells his daughter stories of his time living in Haiti, like his adventures, his dreams. It really transports her to the country, even though she can't just up and go there, and he fuels her love of storytelling so that she's inspired to become a storyteller herself. The kids had a lot of fun with this one. I had them over and I read it to them, and the girls loved it. They thought the illustrations were really funny, and just like the overall story they thought was hilarious. So this little boy goes off to camp, and they have one rule: don't feed the ducks. Well, he accidentally feeds the ducks, and then this giant duck comes after him and is like following him through the campgrounds trying to get him, but it turns out children actually don't taste really good. So luckily he's saved. And Juneteenth, so I had to give the kids some history behind it. And this one was interesting because it not only speaks on the history of Juneteenth, but it also addresses the celebrations that are had in different parts of the US, which I saw a lot of people trying to like talk around that this year. It's because they were so mad about how commercialized Juneteenth is getting. Like, no, Juneteenth is not just for the Texans. Like, yes, that is when slaves in Texas found out that they were free, but also there was a concerted effort to spread Juneteenth to other areas. And in addition to that, like, there are huge celebrations for Juneteenth in other parts of the country, which are also addressed here as well. Like, this author, she is from Buffalo, New York, and she talks about it a little bit in this book, where there was an effort to bring Juneteenth to Buffalo, New York, and their celebration is now huge. And she has personal ties, like, with her grandfather being one of the people who ended up bringing, like, the original Juneteenth celebration in Buffalo to life, to turn it into the big festival that it is now. I went to Philadelphia this month for one of their Juneteenth events. They have the biggest Juneteenth parade in the US. And a lot of people don't realize it, like, are surprised because it's not from the South, but people migrate. A lot of people left Texas and they took the holiday with them. And there was even a period of time where Juneteenth, people stopped celebrating it in Texas, which this book addresses as well, and what efforts were done to revitalize that and spread that to create the events that we know today. We also have Juneteenth Is, which I also read to the girls, and I asked them first, what is Juneteenth, before we started reading it, and they couldn't really tell me. And this kind of gave a good idea of, like, how people celebrate, like the eating of the red foods, the going to parades, but also why it's important in a way that's digestible for younger readers who don't understand the full concept of slavery, and just the importance of family and being together on the holidays. So they like this. It was easy for them to remember different aspects of the Juneteenth celebrations after when I asked them, and the illustrations are really pretty. Everything that I read during the month of June. Let me know if any of these books sound interesting to you. I will try and link them all in the comments, in the description box down below. If you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!